This week on Christian World News, from genocide in China to church bombings in Africa, these believers came to share their stories of suffering and to encourage the global fight for religious freedom. Plus, he was fired for praying on the football field, but this high school coach fought back. Hear how the Supreme Court's ruling affects religious freedom in America. And a World War II hero passes. He fought against tyranny and earned a Medal of Honor. Learn how he gained his own freedom on an Easter Sunday. Welcome to Christian World News, everyone. I'm Wendy Griffith. While some bright spots have emerged in the Middle East, religious persecution worldwide is growing and becoming more deadly. As Jennifer Wishon reports, a diverse international coalition is resolved to do everything in their power to stop it.
Here in the nation's capital, there are few issues that unite both ends of the political spectrum. One is the life-changing work of ending religious persecution around the globe. Billions live where their ability to worship is restricted or forbidden, from genocide in China to Nigeria, where church bombings are all too routine.
If you don't have religious freedom around the world for everybody, every time, all the time, and governments enforce that, you are going to have the clash of civilizations.
Each year, Washington becomes the focal point for work toward a world where all people can worship without fear. Victim stories are heartbreaking.
My name is Yuhan. I came from China, Beijing.
Yuhan's father was killed for practicing Falun Gong. When her family finally got access to his body, they were shocked.
The incision stretched from his throat all the way down to his abdomen. And when they pressed his abdomen, they found that the incision, his abdomen was stuffed with hard ice. Then my father's organ had been harvested while he was still alive. I cannot imagine, I couldn't imagine what he had suffered before he died.
There's too many stories that have never been told and no one know about them. There's so many people are suffering.
Persecution survivor Maryam Ibrahim recounts her story in the new book, Shackled. One woman's dramatic triumph over persecution, gender abuse, and a death sentence. Ibrahim says she felt led to share God's will.
Because the only thing I did, I accept that will, and I continue trusting God during the trial, imprisonment, and knowing that I count my days before I get executed, knowing that I'll never be able to see my children again. And now, coming out of that situation, every day I wake up with a miracle in my life, being able to get my children ready for the school, you know, to prepare their lunch, and to do what I do today is all His work.
U.S. law requires the Commission on International Religious Freedom to maintain a list of prisoners of conscience around the world.
The most important thing is to put a human face on the tragedy.
Rabbi Cooper says hateful anti-Semitism taught in parts of the Middle East has been exported to the West via social media. He points to recent efforts by Ben & Jerry's ice cream, based in Vermont, to boycott the Jewish state of Israel.
These are people more at home with Hamas than with American values.
And while the summit is focused on persecution abroad, victims urge Americans to guard their freedoms.
Liberty is taken away incrementally. It's not all at once. In most cases, it's not overnight.
They say America must remain a beacon for the world.
They look to our principles to say, well, here's a country that's getting it right when it comes to freedom. That's something that we can't lose hold of.
Rabbi Cooper says there's a sleeping giant in America that could change millions of lives.
If you can get every church in the U.S. to adopt one church in Nigeria, just one church, church to church, people to people, things will change there very quickly. Because if we wait for governments to figure this out, we're just going to keep reading over and over again about the body count of the faithful going up.
And now the work continues to change policies that are hurting so many. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, Jennifer. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of a Washington State coach who was fired after praying after football games. The ruling has even greater implications for religious liberty. Caitlin Burke explains.
Both sides of Kennedy versus Bremerton School District argued their case all comes down to the First Amendment. In the end, the majority ruling in favor of individual freedom over government censorship.
The First Amendment means that people of faith can be people of faith. They don't need to choose between the job that they love and their faith to stay employed.
In 2015, the Bremerton School District in Washington State fired Coach Joseph Kennedy for praying on the 50-yard line after football games. Their concern? That allowing those prayers to go on would come across as a state endorsement of his religion. Kennedy's lawyers pointed to both the free exercise and free speech clauses of the Constitution to protect the coach's right to pray. The High Court agreed. Justice Neil Gorsuch, writing for the majority, said, quote, "Respect for religious expressions is indispensable to life in a free and diverse republic, whether those expressions take place in a sanctuary or on a field, and whether they manifest through the spoken word or a bowed head."
What I think we saw Justice Gorsuch say so well today is that you cannot use, school districts cannot use the Establishment Clause to censor the free exercise clause, as they've done so many times, too many times in the last many years now.
In her dissent, Justice Sonia Sotomayor accused the court of eroding religious liberty for all by elevating the religious rights of a school official over those of his students. Monday's ruling also had major implications on the so-called Lemon test. For decades in religious liberty cases, the Supreme Court referred to a ruling from 1971, Lemon versus Kurtzman, as a framework for dealing with separation of church and state under the First Amendment. Now, experts say that complicated legal standard has essentially been eliminated, meaning courts will no longer necessarily favor secular interests over religious ones.
I think it's very clear that the Lemon test is now no longer good law, that instead we're going to look at the unique facts and history, the circumstances that has welcomed religion in the public square throughout our country's history.
Coach Kennedy told CBN News his faith has sustained him through a long legal battle. Now he's ready to get back out on the field.
My faith has grown so much, not just in God and the closeness of that, but the faith through my family. We've become a lot tighter as a family as Christians, and also everybody in the nation. It's just great to see how God works in these ways.
Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, Caitlin. Remembering an American hero who fought for our freedoms, Herschel Woody Williams was the last surviving Medal of Honor winner from World War II. He died this week at age 98. John Jessup brings us his extraordinary story.
As a Marine corporal on Iwo Jima, Woody led his battalion's assault, taking out 7 enemy pillboxes over 4 hours. He faced enemy gunfire and direct attacks, going back for more flamethrowers as he ran low on fuel. That same day, Woody saw Old Glory waving over Mount Suribachi, the iconic photo that made headlines around the world. In 1945, President Harry Truman awarded Woody the Medal of Honor for his actions that day. Not only did Woody kill several enemy soldiers, but 2 of his fellow Marines gave their own lives to save his. Like many veterans of war, he struggled to adjust after returning home. On Easter Sunday, 1962, Woody went to church with his wife and 2 girls and heard the pastor describe Christ's suffering on the cross.
And that Christ had sacrificed his life just for us. Well, that hit home with these 2 Marines. Here are 2 individuals who didn't have to give their life, but they did, protecting me. And it really got me. It really got me. And for the first time, I realized that there are sacrifices made for us.
Woody went to the altar that day and prayed. He served the Lord the rest of his life and taught Sunday school at his church for 44 years.
Woody gave a full account of the Battle of Iwo Jima and shared his testimony of coming to faith in Christ with the 700 Club. You can watch that story on our website. Just go to cbnnews.com. Well, up next, tracking the spiritual temperature of America phone by phone. See the major role Bible apps play in spreading the gospel. Next. Welcome back to Christian World News. Americans who consistently engage with the Bible are more hopeful and better able to deal with crises in their lives. That's according to a recent study by the American Bible Society. Phone and internet interviews with more than 2,500 adults found reading and applying the Bible makes a, quote, significant difference in well-being. Bible readers score as much as 19% higher on the hope scale and record higher levels of well-being when faced with trauma. Wow. Well, 15 years ago, Apple started selling the iPhone, revolutionizing the way we communicate. And as Abigail Robertson reports, it's also created new ways to evangelize and spread the gospel.
This iPhone was the first to download the YouVersion Bible app, an app that now has more than 500 million downloads. The free app was also among the first 200 available in the App Store.
I am super grateful for the iPhone because it made it possible for us to have the Bible app.
And that opportunity came a year after the iPhone release, when Apple opened the digital doors of its App Store.
We saw the technology as a potential to reach people with the gospel, and we had no idea, though, how God could use it in such a powerful way to reach people in every single country and territory with his word. And we've been able to be a witness to something really incredible that God's done.
The app now features about 2,600 versions of the Bible in almost 1,800 languages. Founder Bobby Grunwald, also a pastor at Life Church in Oklahoma, tells CBN News the next phase of the app will help people connect with local churches.
And we're really excited to be able to provide that because we really care passionately about the Capital C Church. And we really believe the Bible app is a great tool to help be able to connect people to church and local communities to help them grow spiritually.
YouVersion partnered with the Museum of the Bible to create this high-tech digital exhibit.
This is a fun spot in the museum. It's Bible Now. So you see here what's going on with the here and now of the Bible.
One part shows the most popular Bible verses and keyword searches in each country where the Bible app is available.
You can look at it and see what people are searching for and really kind of take a temperature of what's going on in the world and how people are feeling by what they're looking up in the Bible.
Shannon Bennett from the Museum of the Bible tells CBN News how the app is helping spread the gospel.
We can really look at YouVersion as a continuation of Gutenberg's tradition and getting the Bible into the hands of everyone around the world. Maybe you can download the Bible app in North Korea, but if you bring your phone in that has the Bible on it already, there it is, in a country that bans the Bible.
Grunwald's church constantly monitors how new technology can be used to share the gospel.
We're not proclaiming that that's where everybody's at or where that's even the next big thing. But we're just wanting to, do these experiments, try things. We just don't want to be guilty of not making every attempt to share the gospel with people wherever they're at.
Currently, Life Church has about 150 people from all over the world attending their church in the metaverse.
What we found is really interesting, but people, when they have a physical facade, when they're using an avatar, for example, to kind of navigate these virtual environments, they're much more comfortable sharing spiritual and emotional things that are kind of going on the inside.
Grunwald says so far the metaverse has created a really rich opportunity for ministry where the church has seen positive results, but he acknowledges it's still an experiment. Reporting from Washington, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Thanks, Abby. Coming up, honoring pioneers of the gospel. Meet the 7 church leaders who helped blaze the trail for the African American church. Welcome back to Christian World News. It's been said, to know your future, you must know your past. That sentiment sums up a recent event that honored 7 modern-day Christian pioneers who've contributed to the church in America, creating pathways for generations to follow. John Jessup has the story.
Here in the heart of the nation's capital, the Museum of the Bible transformed into a one-night red carpet gala event to honor the leaders and pioneers of the African American church over the last several decades. glitzy gowns, and the stirring sound of gospel music filled the museum halls for the first Blessing of the Elders ceremony. The purpose? To honor trailblazing pastors in the Black church and recognize their overall contributions to the American religious experience.
Are we here to have a good time?
The star-studded evening included gospel recording artists B.B. Winans and Erica Campbell as hosts, with musical performances by Fred Hammond, Lecrae, the Clark Sisters, and more. The packed theater honored two women, Bishop Vashti McKenzie and pastor and singer Shirley Caesar.
I'm standing in a building that represents the Lord. It represents the Word of God. And so I feel like I'm being represented too.
And five men, Pastor Tony Evans, Bishop Charles Blake, civil rights leader John Perkins, Bishop T.D. Jakes, and Pastor A.R. Bernard. The ceremony also symbolic of the passing of the baton to the next wave of preachers and teachers. And even some of Hollywood's biggest names came to pay homage.
Man gives the award, God gives the reward.
In his acceptance speech, Pastor Bernard highlighted the Black church's roots in slavery, adding that the institution was really born out of the system of segregation, when literal walls separated worship between fellow believers.
We did not mimic the white Christian church in America. We actually created a parallel with our own identity, our own hymns, our own style of preaching and worship that was initially rooted in our slave experience. So it became central to the Black community. It preserved Black history and Black tradition.
At first, the Black church gave African Americans a sense of dignity and grew to form a basis for community and activism. More recently, during the pandemic, it lent its credibility as a public health partner, setting up clinics in Black neighborhoods. Another issue at the top of the list, confronting crime, something Bishop McKenzie, the first woman to lead the AME Church, said requires Christians to be bold and bound in unity.
Stand firm in the gospel of Jesus Christ. Even though God will send you into hostile places, stand firm.
You cannot talk about America and not talk about the Black church.
Organizers and historians agree the impact of the Black church reaches beyond color, noting how it served as the conscience of America in the fight for civil rights and modeled reconciliation and love in the wake of tragedies like the massacre at Mother Emanuel Church, where the families of the victims memorably forgave the shooter.
And I think that the Black church is poised to really be the bridge builder in a very divided nation.
A belief echoed by others.
So when we can come together and say that God teaches us that we are all equally loved, valued, and appreciated by our Creator God, then it helps us come together and unify and serve the one God that we all love.
From Moses to Joshua, Elijah to Elisha, Naomi and Ruth, and Jesus and the disciples, the blessing of the elder and passing the torch can be seen throughout Scripture, transferring vision and legacy from one generation to the next. At this inaugural event, leaders not only acknowledged the history and influence of the Black church, but a future where there's one unified church reconciled in love, promoting the good news to bring healing to a divided nation and a broken world. John Jessup, CBN News, Washington.
Finally this week, a scuba diver swimming in the Mediterranean Sea uncovered an amazing artifact from Israel's history. Emily Jones has that story and more from Jerusalem.
Welcome to Inside Israel, where we show you what's happening in Israel and the Middle East. A political earthquake is shaking the Jewish state. Israel's parliament has voted to disband after deep ideological divisions within Naftali Bennett's ruling coalition drove the government to collapse just a year after it began. Bennett's coalition partner, Yair Lapid, is now Israel's caretaker prime minister. He'll battle Benjamin Netanyahu at the polls on November 1st, Israel's fifth election in 3.5 years. Polls predict another inconclusive election with neither side winning enough of the vote to form a government. An ancient weapon found in Israeli waters dates back to the time of the Crusaders. Israeli scuba diver Shlomi Katzin found this 900-year-old fully intact sword while diving off the country's Mediterranean coast. It likely belonged to the Crusaders, who captured Jerusalem in 1099 AD and ruled this area of the Holy Land for 200 years.
Following the weight of the sword, we assumed that the knight that hold this sword was very strong, because to fight with this weight and this size of sword, it wasn't so easy. Even today, to hold it, it's heavy.
The diver also found stone anchors and pottery fragments in the seabed. Israeli authorities call it one more piece of the puzzle of understanding Israel's history. The Bible commands us to love the widow and the orphan. One Israeli organization is doing just that. Every week, this home is filled with kids playing, parents meeting, and volunteers helping. The organization is called Amutzim, and it's dedicated to helping families go through the trauma of losing a spouse or a parent. Here, trained volunteers serve hot meals, love, and emotional support.
This was a place where they spoil us. They have, good fruit and food cut out for us. We don't have to work because we're on 24/7. When you're raising 3 children on your own, you don't really get any time to rest. And I could sit down and my kids wouldn't be on top of me as they are all the time. It was a place where I could rest.
They look to Isaiah the prophet, who said, "Learn to do good, seek justice, rebuke the oppressor, defend the fatherless, and plead for the widow." Thank you so much for joining me this week for Inside Israel. To see more stories like this, watch our Jerusalem Dateline program at cbnnews.com. Back to you.
Thanks so much, Emily. Wow, that sword was fascinating. Well, thanks for joining us this week. From all of us here at Christian World News, goodbye. And as always, God bless you.